Hi, I'm Ali and a warm welcome to the China Repair Studio. So in today's video I thought I'd do a little bit of painting on the tail of this horse here. In my previous video I did actually put some Milliput on and just fixed and applied some new parts to the missing parts of the tail. I've sanded and now it's ready for painting. Now what I'm going to use is a mixture of powder pigments, which I have here, and also some acrylics. You can use acrylics by themselves or you can use powder pigments by themselves, and sometimes you can actually mix them together as well if you've got particular colour that you actually want to achieve. Now I do collect bottle tops here just to mix paint in, which is great, and I've got a selection of brushes, a glass of water just to mix the brushes in afterwards to protect them. And I've also got some treasure gold here, which I absolutely love because there are some bits of goldy parts on here, and we can just finish off with a little rub with this. Now, right, let's have a look. So I'm just going to start, I can see the base is slightly more blue. So we're going to go for a cerulean blue colour here, and I'm going to mix it with a little bit of yellow ochre, which is a really good colour. It's just such a good base colour for everything. As you can see, it's well and truly used. So first of all, let's just take our little pot. So what we're going to do is just first of all take a little bit of the cerulean blue, and I'm just going to have a little cocktail stick and just apply just a little bit into our pot here. Then I'm going to add a little bit of the yellow ochre here. It's a fresh cocktail stick, so just take some of that off, and I'm just going to add just a tiny bit. It just knocks it back a bit, and you just need to keep playing around with the colours until you're happy and satisfied that it's the right colour and the right tone. So just give that a little mix. Now that's quite blue, so I'm going to add just a little bit of brown to it as well, and you may want to add just a tiny little bit of water at the same time. You don't want too much water, you don't want to make it too watery, otherwise you need a bit of thickness, otherwise it's not going to actually sort of show up. That colour's looking pretty good. And the good thing about painting with the colour, if it's not the right tone, you can always change it, mix it around a bit. I'm just going to add, I think, just a tiny bit of white. And the white I tend to use is titanium white. Now these are professional acrylic colours by Winsor and Newton, but there are obviously other brands out there. So I just take, you can see here, got my there, and I'm just going to take a fresh cocktail stick actually. Just add a tiny bit of white, lid back on. Just put that away because we can always add more white afterwards. Now when I'm adding a bit of water and glaze, I'm just going to take a brush here, and I do like to use sable brushes. They're finer, you don't get so much brush marks, and they're just better quality. And then we'll just see what that's turning into, what that's looking like. That's looking pretty good actually. And I'm just going to add a little bit of the ceramic glaze. As I say, we can play around with the colour. So it's ceramic glaze, and then I'm just going to take again a fresh cocktail stick, always useful to have a few, and just, you only need a little bit, it just locks the colour in. There we go. And then again our brush. Right, so let's just see what that's like. It's a little bit thick at the moment, so I'm just going to add a tiny bit more water. We can keep applying layers. So I'm just going to take this part here and just as a quick base, just start to paint in. I'm doing this by hand today rather than using an airbrush because this has lots of different tones to it, and we don't want it to be too flat. And it takes a couple of times to build the colour up as well, by the way. You know, you're not going to just do it on the first, but this is a very good colour base. So I'm just applying sort of all round and everywhere. Quite therapeutic. It's always good also to have a window open when you're doing this if you're not doing it outside. Just to make sure you've got fresh air in there. If the paint starts to dry, again, always dip in just a tiny bit more water just to keep everything flowing nicely. Because this is so, we use the white here, it's going to take a few coats to really get that through and to blend in. Making sure we've got all the angles. Before we apply the first coat. And because we've made it so we're not putting too thick a coat on it, the paint is going to dry very quickly, so then we can move on to the next section to then getting more colour on and applying. So it's quite tricky, this one, because it's all sort of inwards, quite difficult to get to, but it's fine. And I'll just keep going over, making sure we've taken all that white out. It's just quick to note that when you are, if you've actually fixed something and, you know, glued it back together, do not hold on to that part again. Again, obviously it will break otherwise. So just to be mindful when you are actually then working on your item, that you're not suddenly holding and with potential of breaking something else. I'll just do this part of the tail here. As I say, there was lots of different tones to this, so it's actually quite a good piece if you were starting out. Working all the way. Make sure you've also got good light as well, because artificial light's quite yellow, so you want natural light where you can see the true colour of the item. So I'm just going to let that dry just for a few moments, and looking at the colour now, I think I'm going to add a little bit more blue. It's got a slight bit of green to it. And another tip as well is if you do have a colour and you want to sort of kind of colour match, you can also just go onto the true, and then you can compare colours, for instance, then just wipe it off again with a finger or a damp cloth. So now I'm going to add a little bit more blue this time to start building up that colour. It seems to be more green here but more blue on the tail.